Welcome to Coast Vue, the show that every single day celebrates the men and women of coastal Mississippi and Mississippi for that matter, who are working so hard to create a better place to live, work, and play. Hey, I really enjoyed our show yesterday. If you missed it, I'm going to just tell you a little bit about it. I had my friend James O'Byrne on. We worked together at NOLA Media Group, and he had a long history with our publication, the Times-Picayune, and our website, NOLA.com. Of working in incredible ways. A Pulitzer Prize winning writer and editor, and someone who became the part of my inner circle at NOLA Media Group. In fact, I named him the VP of Innovation because he's not only has a great content background, but he's just a really smart guy. More recently, though, he moved to France. He and his wife Paula moved to France, and they live in France now. And you know, he's a traveler and a photographer and a writer, and as I say, just a really smart guy. And I've had 2 or 3 sessions with him over the past couple of years. We talked about, as you can imagine, Macron, who's the president of France. We talked about Macron's role in the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. He had some specific comments about that. We talked a little bit about what that's all about, incidentally. We talked about big tech's responsibility with social media because he and I spent a lot of time in our digital media world thinking about this stuff. We talked about what it's like to live in the countryside of France, you know, just in general, but also, you know, during the pandemic, especially after spending a career in New Orleans. But if you missed it, you can go to the SuperTalk Mississippi Facebook or YouTube site. You can go to the SuperTalk Gulf Coast Facebook page. You can go to your favorite podcast. You can go to Coast Vue, Ricky Mathews at Facebook as well. But you can listen to it just about any way you want to. And I really appreciate you listening on 103.1. The feedback for the show continues to be absolutely incredible. So now I want to share with you, during my time as the president and publisher of the Sun Herald, I was honored to work with some really amazing leaders. And you know, after Hurricane Katrina, I was especially inspired. And I later wrote about how inspired I was when I wrote the foreword to Haley Barbour's book about the post-Katrina leadership effort. The book, by the way, is America's Great Storm, leading through Hurricane Katrina. It's an incredible book. But I was really fortunate and honored to write the foreword to that. But I personally got to witness great leadership and truly incredible leadership. And during my time at the Sun Herald, I came in contact with a lot of great leaders. But in Jackson County, 2 or 3 of them come to mind. And of that group, one in particular comes to mind, who is an incredible community leader, someone who's quietly for so many years made so many different impacts. And that's Royce Cumbest, who's the president and CEO of Merchants and Marine Bank. And I want to welcome him now to Coast Vue. First of all, good morning, Royce. How you doing?
Doing fine. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate your kind words.
Well, it's good to see you. My biggest observation when I finally, you know, said I got to reach out to Royce and schedule some time with him was I can't believe I didn't already have you on the show. You know, for example, I had George Freeland on just in the past few days,
right,
who gives an update about the Jackson County Economic Development Foundation that you've been incredibly active in, and a major force in making sure that governmental private organization continues to bring all stakeholders into the conversation around economic development. But you know, your name comes up just about every conversation I have with someone from Jackson County, and I guess that says a lot about your leadership over a lot of years. That's what I see.
Well, I was in a meeting with George this morning, and yeah, we had our monthly meeting this morning, and I mentioned to him that I was going to be doing your show. He said, "Well, I just did it the other day." I said, "Well, good." So
you're the chairman of the board, right?
I chair it now, right? You know, we take turns. The outside independent directors, the folks from the workforce. We have about 4 of us that are not mayors or political type people. And so I think we have a 16-member board, but there are about 4 of us at large. And so that's rotated every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, that's incredible. Well, you're the president and CEO of Merchants and Marine Bank, and I mentioned it's been a little bit of time since I've actually laid eyes on you. And you're a guy who seems sort of ageless to me. I know that you said you don't feel ageless,
No.
But you think about the Cumbest family. Good Lord. I mean, synonymous with Jackson County. I want to talk about your parents for a second. Man, they made a tremendous impact on the community and you, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Growing up, all of us were expected to work. And I would go with my dad to the sawmill when I was really young, probably 8, 10 years old. My job was to answer the telephone in the office while he was out on Saturday here. We were open until noon. And so he was selling lumber. And if he got a phone call, I would run from the office out to the retail area and get him. So that was my job, that plus sweep the floors, that kind of thing. And I guess one of the biggest promotions I ever got, I was finally about 13 or so, 12 or 13, and they started letting me work with the men, handling lumber and stuff like that. And I actually started getting paid then. There was a lady there that was our bookkeeper, Ms. Mary Alice Chatham, and she talked my dad into paying me, I think it was like 50 cents an hour. I thought I'd make big then.
Yeah, I remember my first paying job was working for my dad, who was in the floor covering business, and he paid me $1 an hour, and I felt like I was a rich man for sure.
Exactly.
Those were the days. But Caswell Springs, tell me about that place.
Caswell Springs, it's the name of a church up there, Caswell Springs United Methodist Church, which you see on Highway 63. But Caswell Springs is a series of springs on Caswell Lake where the church got its name from. So, and it, of course, it borders and empties into the river there, the Pascagoula River. So we all grew up right there. We used to hike through the woods. It's about a 2-mile hike from, say, Highway 63, where we lived, to the lake over at Caswell Lake. And but in the summers, we all went barefooted and we liked to fish. And so we would hike through the swamp and go fish in Caswell Lake. Used to catch a lot of brim and shellcracker, stuff like that over there.
Oh, that's so neat. You've been active in Caswell Springs United Methodist Church, I guess, most of your life, huh?
Right.
So your family went there, and you're still sort of that's your anchor from a faith point of view.
That's correct. And my brother Barry is he is chairman of the board there now, and so we've always active role. My wife's really involved in the children's ministry there.
Not surprised to hear that, just knowing who you are and sort of your moral and ethical character. You went to East Central High School, went on to Millsaps and University of Southern Mississippi. Tell me a little bit about that part of your journey.
Well, Millsaps actually was a good experience. So it's a great school, has a great reputation, but I went there because of another gentleman that you probably know or knew, Mr. Eddie Kayat. He went to school there. And so throughout all my young years of growing up, he promoted Millsaps College. And so I started there, and then most of my friends were at Southern, guys I went to high school with. So after a couple of years at Millsaps, I transferred to Southern and frankly, by then I realized I wanted to go into business, and Southern has such a tremendous business school. I mean, you can take any course of study you want, from insurance to banking to whatever. And I thought it offered a lot more opportunity to expand into the business program. Then later on did get into banking and finished the 3-year course at LSU. They have a 3-year graduate level course at their School of Banking. And that's something, if you want to be in bank management and you're from the South, you almost have to do. It's almost a prerequisite.
Yeah, I've learned about that over the years from people like George Schlegel, who I know has been very active in that organization. and
Yep.
it's got an incredible reputation. I know so many local bankers who have been there. But you're right. I mean, in order for you to rise to the higher ranks of most banks, you got to kind of go through that program, don't you?
You do. And George Slogan and I were there at the same time, along with Jolly McCarty and another fellow from Pascagoula, Glenn Davis. We started and finished at the same time. And George, I think, did go back, and he was an instructor there for a while.
He was there for, I think, for many years, actually. You landed in the banking business in 1971. And when we come back, I'm going to talk about the period between 1971 and 1977 when you actually became a vice president. And
Okay.
you never look back. You continue to kind of move up in the organization. Merchants and Marine Bank has become this incredible icon in coastal Mississippi. We'll tell more about that story here in just a second.
Okay.
See you after this break. Welcome back to Coast Vue. I have my dear friend Royce Cumbest, who's sort of one of these icons in coastal Mississippi, especially in Jackson County. When you think about the role that he's played at Merchants and Marine Bank and in the community for so many years. But you became the president and CEO in 1985. You became chairman in 1991. And it's 2022. It's 2022.
Right.
And for the radio audience, you should go to Facebook and watch this conversation between myself and Royce to see how, when I say ageless, he has been incredibly ageless. But when you look back on your career in banking, is it amazing to you how much time has flown by, or how do you think about it?
Well, it amazes me that it has flown by as fast as it has. At one point in time, I guess back in the 80s and then later in the 90s, I realized that the decades were moving by so fast. It was almost incredible to think about it and to realize that another decade had gone by. And so I guess it really focused me a little more, and I've tried to learn to live more in the present, but I also learned at the same time that because life passes so fast that we have to be very intentional about what we want to do. And I think that was a realization that was one of those realizations that really had an influence on what we've done since the mid 80s and building the bank and moving forward. So
I like the way you say that. You had to be more intentional about what you do because you have goals. And I tell you, I agree with you that I think probably the older I got as a publisher, the more impatient I got.
Right.
Because I saw the wheels of change in certain areas turning way too slow. And it could be very, very frustrating for me. And I became kind of, throughout, I would say the last many years of my career, very, if you were to define me, I was a sort of a change agent. I was a guy who was, working on some of the most difficult strategic change efforts, both within the Knight Ridder company and also within the Newhouse and Advanced Condé Nast company. But right. But age does that to you. But also, I think an expectation. I mean, you saw Merchants and Marine Bank and the role that it was playing in the community, and you wanted it to be strong. You wanted it to be able to serve this community in so many different ways. In some ways, I think Katrina reestablished in you sort of a desire to strengthen the bank. I mean, there were all these regulation changes along the way. There's never been much rest for the weary in the banking industry. But, if you look back, you probably look at it with a lot of pride to say, man, we went through a lot of chapters in our history and came out stronger on the other side. Is that the way you look at it?
Oh, I think that's absolutely how you look at it. It was, Katrina was, it was like, what is it? The book, is it? It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You remember? Was it
Yes.
Charles Dickens?
Yes.
That's the way Katrina was. what I learned there, because I mean we got washed out of downtown Pascagoula. We couldn't operate here, and so we had to move our computer center to a branch in Escataba, which is probably about 8 miles north of here. Move our operations people up there. We tore down walls. We ran wiring. Just did what we had to do to get a facility up and going again so we could process work. And I think Katrina hit on a Tuesday, and we were up and running by midday on Thursday, running checks, running our work. And some banks had to fly the paperwork to Atlanta, to Dallas, and other places to have it processed. But we achieved that, which was a big achievement for us. And it was a daily struggle just to find food for our people, because restaurants weren't open. And some of the local churches had food brought in. There was one little place called Four Seasons where they sell fruits and vegetables. They got a lot of fruit and stuff in. We just go through and we'd buy up everything we could find that we could feed to our employees: bananas, oranges, anything to keep them going. And because they didn't have any food at home, and they didn't have electricity at home. And I think the great thing that came out of it was that we realized just how strong we were as a group of people. And you realize that, having lived on the coast, we go through so many of these events like this. Hurricanes come through ever so often. And I was just real proud of our people, the way they pulled together. And actually, it was an exciting time too.
It's the best of times, worst of times. I love the way you say that, because I agree that you don't want to be in the position, but the reality is you are there. And so now, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to step up and lead by example? And you not only were you bringing your bank back, you ultimately co-chaired the Rebuild Jackson County effort following Katrina, the Mississippi Recovery Fund. You were on the board. You worked with the governor's Hurricane Relief Mississippi Rising effort, and probably silently in so many other ways. We all kind of found that moment. And what I came to understand, some people you would have expected to step up did not. It's really an interesting observation that I made. And other people that you would have never expected to step up, they did. And what I came to understand about that was that we oftentimes, too often, take someone on face value, and we don't dig deep enough to really understand the person that's really there. And we really got to know people deeper after Katrina. And I changed my entire evaluation process in terms of how I wanted to get deeper, to understand, how did I misread that person who now is leading the charge in so many different ways? I know you saw the same kind of thing, didn't you?
Oh yeah, very much so. It surprised me, some of our people who came forward. We had a fellow here who headed up our computer center at the time, and of course they changed terminology all the time. It's IT center now, and that goes. But anyway, this young man stayed here the night that Katrina hit, and he realized that this water was coming up the street. He could see it coming up. It was creeping up the glass door on the outside of the bank. He could see it rising. He went into the computer center, knew enough about how computers work, and he pulls out these boards where all the information is stored, took it upstairs, wrapped it in plastic. And that enabled us, when we finally did get new machines in, because all of the operating computers that we had downstairs were destroyed. They were flooded. But we were able to get new equipment in on Wednesday, and we were running again by Thursday because of his foresight. And he was one of the heroes. He was so many heroes.
And Absolutely. What we learned is that to be resilient as a set of communities, we've gotten pretty good at this, that the heroes, they're all around us.
Right.
They understand what it looks like to bounce back. They're thinking, how do we bounce back better? They're being innovative about that. They're making the proper decisions. And you were one of those guys, I might add. And that's why right after Hurricane Katrina, they made the first class of South Mississippi Outstanding Community Leader, which is now the One Coast Award. The very first class after Hurricane Katrina, you were one of those guys that was selected. And there was a reason for that, because you burned the midnight oil and you did what was necessary to not only bring your bank back, but also contribute back to the community. And we really appreciate that. Hey, we're kind of running out of time together, but here's what we're going to do. We're going to stay in touch with each other, and we'll check in with you. What I want to do the next time we get together is talk more specifically, less about you as a leader, which is what I wanted to do during this session, and talk a little bit more about the bank. What's the latest going on at the bank these days? And we'll delve into that for sure. So how are we doing on time? We got how much we got? Oh, he's showing me we have 1 minute left. So anyway, I'll give you the last word, Royce. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you.
I was going to tell you, I still have. Hold on just a second.
Yeah, he's on. We're on radio. I think what he's doing is he's walking to grab his Outstanding Leaders plaque that I handed to him in 2006.
Gave me that day.
Yes.
I've got a picture on the wall over here too. You and I and Governor Haley Barbour.
Yeah.
At that event.
And we all three of us understood the importance of it. It wasn't just some surface observation or recognition. It was deeply, deeply given to you, and I know deeply appreciated as well. But the governor and I were thrilled to be able to give you that recognition. Well, anyway, we're kind of out of time, Royce. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's good to see you doing well, and keep up the great work, and we'll see you soon.
I enjoyed visiting with you, and I appreciate what you're continuing to do to raise the
aware. Yeah. God bless you, man. Take care.
Thank you.
We'll see you after this break.
Okay. Bye-bye.